Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. My name is Mark Anthony Peter, and welcome to episode 2 of Breakthrough, WESN's newest arts and culture show. I am joined, as per usual, with my co-host, Mr. Sean Michael Small. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning. Yes, I speak too much, hence Mark is taking up more of the responsibilities, folks.
No, I mean, the intros are always good, so, you know, it's fine. It's fine.
And yet you took it from me. My one job. I have one job on the show, to have an over-the-top intro for you.
You did the
to be your hype man.
You did. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. But you did the inaugural intro. Now it's my turn. Okay? Thank you very much.
Okay.
Right. Leave it to talking point. And ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by 3 wonderful guests here. We have members of the National Philharmonic Orchestra. We have the director of the National Philharmonic Orchestra, Dr. Roger Henry. Good morning.
Morning, morning.
We have cellist and also arranger for the National Philharmonic Orchestra, Wasia Ward. Good morning.
Good morning.
And we also have concert master of the National Philharmonic Orchestra, Mr. Simon Browne. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you all so much for coming this morning. I know it's Monday morning, but I really do appreciate it. I know Dr. Henry has a lot of work to get to.
That's true.
After. All right, so we're just gonna get right into it. So we're gonna talk a little bit about the orchestra for a second. Now, recently, you all celebrated 11 years of existence. Congratulations on that. And in terms of the whole, from start to now, in terms of the overall purpose, vision, and mission of the National Philharmonic Orchestra, do you think, has it fulfilled? Has it even gone past the expectations? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so the NPO started as a project in 2013, and it was started as a 3-month project just to test the idea that Trinidad and Tobago might be ready for an orchestra of this type. Here we are 11 years later, okay?
Yeah.
So that's to start with. In terms of the mission and the vision, we have a very, very clear vision, and that is to be a premium source of instrumental music in Trinidad and Tobago, okay? The mission has also involved building an audience for orchestra music, because we don't have a history of orchestra music. Outside of the steel pan orchestra, we don't have a tradition, a history, a practice of going to listen to orchestra music. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that a lot of the orchestra music that was being played was music that didn't speak to our culture, our history. And so a lot of people felt that there was no need for it.
Yeah.
Okay? But I'm a musician, and you know, living the life of a musician, I've come to a very simple conclusion, which is that music is music. And you can make music with a piece of paper and a comb. You can make you can make music with a piece of metal, and you can make music with an instrument. But the instrument is only the voice of the musicianship that is inside of you.
Yeah.
The instrument only helps to externalize that. So it doesn't matter what you play. So the mission of the orchestra over the past 10, 11 years has been to help people to realize that, yeah, in fact, yeah, it's music. It's musical instruments.
Right.
And it sounds a certain way because that's how that instrument is played.
Yes.
So a symphony orchestra sounds a certain way. It sounds different from a piano, for instance. You play a certain kind of music on a piano, and you play a certain kind of music on an orchestra. Now, we use piano to play all kinds of music. We use it to play rock, classical, soca, everything. And so there's no reason why we couldn't play a variety of different types of music on the orchestra as well.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but then people have to realize that that's possible. So the mission of the orchestra over the past several years is to slowly build an education around the idea of symphonic music in our environment here.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you
Now,
very much.
I want to tell you, this is really our first time having a long conversation. I'm a long talker.
Oh.
So you feel free to cut me off whenever the answer feels complete.
No problem.
All right.
Thank you so much. And I'm glad. Go ahead.
No, it's kind of ironic. Now we're in trouble because it's 2 long talkers on desk, and it's a packed desk.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But you mentioned, and I think that reach of our music being played in the context of an orchestra, I think it's also reaching internationally, globally as well. There is a clip that I want to just throw to, and then we're going to continue discussion. Can we throw the first clip? It's really a good, feel-good moment. Yes.
I love this rhythm section. And let's yell. Here we go with the rhythm section of Holland Baroque. Yes, I love it. Sayamanda, 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 ring the bell. Tell who? Sweet soul music down Louisiana.
Yes, so that was the Trinidadian-born classical singer, Janine de Beek. She's singing Sayamanda there with the Holland Baroque. Now, we spoke about, doing our music and in orchestral context, and there we have, that really, really good moment that sort of went viral on social media. I want to go to Mr. Browne for a little bit and just ask you, how important do you feel performing this type of music, and what are your thoughts on the reach that it's getting in terms of the orchestra?
I think it's incredibly important. Other countries have already performed symphonic or different versions of their folk music, of their local music. My old orchestra, when I was in England 15 years ago, we had a lot of different cultural projects. We played with local folk musicians in North England. We played with jazz musicians. We played with Nitin Sawhney, with classical Indian. And we played, I got to play with the Buena Vista Social Club when they toured England. So the idea of a symphony orchestra having this variety, this flexibility to explore lots of different cultures is not new, and it's something that hasn't been done to Trinidadian music, to put it in that context of realizing a different potential for the music. And it's great music. Yeah. One of the first things when I came to Trinidad 15 years ago is because of the wealth of music that was here. And since I've come, I've sort of immersed myself in all this history of music from way back from 1912 on to now. And it's also important to realize that the first recorded calypso in Trinidadian music was on symphonic instruments. Yeah. Violin, cello, flute, clarinet, piano, trumpet. These are all the instruments that Roaring Lion, Attila, Growling Tiger, they sang to those instruments. Yeah. So you can't say it's not we instruments. Yeah. They were there, and people embraced them in the first half of the 20th century.
But is there something, because I know like with commercial music, there might be a song, and I can't remember what it was, but it's a somewhat famous song that got covered multiple times throughout decades, and slight variations to update it for each artist's interpretation. But the point is it reintroduces that piece to a new generation. So even if we're taking something that didn't use orchestral music by giving a different spin, you don't just have an orchestral version that you're introducing, but you also open the door, well, yes, and then there's the original from way back when, and you could check that out too.
Yeah. I think that a lot of what we gain from this is the whole idea of recontextualizing the things that we know. I'm an educator, and for me, I observe the education process to be something that involves always kind of introducing students to something that is new and allowing them time to integrate what this new stuff is with what they already know. And I think we're in a place now in Trinidad and Tobago where people are ready for the idea that this new way of expressing the music that we have can be educational, it can also be entertaining, and it can also be affirming of the original music, as you talked about. Right? Now, my friend over here, Wasia Ward, has done a fantastic reinterpretation of a very famous song by a very famous artist. And I wonder, Wasia, if you want to take a few minutes to talk about that.
Before we get that, I actually
You don't want to?
I
All
I
right.
have a little clip that I want to show. Can we go to the second clip? It's really fantastic. Let's just take a look at it. So that was me saying yes. I took that video. I'm sorry. They didn't say that it wasn't allowed, but I always respected it when they say it's not allowed. So for those who may not have recognized it, that's actually an orchestral arrangement of Bunji Garland's song Hard Fets, right? And Sean really exclaimed at that last chord that they had just now. It was really good.
Oh, yeah. No, because ironically, it didn't just invoke orchestral. It actually reminded me of like those big nightclub bands or even a more pop sound. Like it encompassed more than just, concert hall orchestra, right? It evoked multiple emotions out of me in that, because it was just like, chord, just nice. I don't know how else to say it, just nice. So
what can you tell us about?
by the way, it's only after he was there enjoying the audio, the musical delicacies. He was like messaging me, I should have brought you here.
Oh,
You should have come. It was like 8:30 and apparently
that was a different thing.
Okay.
It was the open rehearsal. I was like, you probably should have been here.
Right.
But don't worry, I'll drag him to the show.
Yes.
By the way, keep the 29 free. All right? So yes. So tell us a little bit about the arrangements and that fantastic arrangement.
Okay, so my goal usually when, I guess, rewriting already existing music is to add new elements to the music and to make it a bit more expansive instead of just writing the music. So what else can I do with this to further, I guess, talk about the ideas that maybe the original composer would have put on paper. How do I make it fit the orchestra, but also to keep it exciting, have the audience, thinking, wow, this is really what this is our music, It's not just something we can listen to in a fete or on the road, but like I want to sit down and look at this. I want to sit down and see what this is.
I would parade to that arrangement on the
Right?
road. Yes,
Yeah.
I would do that. Yes.
exactly. It would be interesting to see the kind of music trucks to carry an orchestra on the road.
I can imagine
Yes.
people pelting ways to that.
I mean, live brass, Etienne Charles brought live
Exactly.
brass.
So I was vexed. I was in my seat. I couldn't stand up. But anyway. But yes.
Stand up on the 29th.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah.
Even as late as 1960s, there's videos of people walking down the street with basses and cellos.
Yes. And we do have a history of string band music.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
I mean, in some ways, basically what you're saying is we might take it for granted, why do we need this foreign thing and introduce it, when in reality, it's not introducing, it's reintroducing
Yeah.
something that pre-existed.
They already made it their own back in the early 20th century.
Yeah. At the end of the day, an instrument with strings is an instrument with strings. Whether it's a guitar that you use to play calypso or soca.
Take Old Lady, Old Lady. Everyone knows that. They know it from Kitchener's recording. But the very first recording of that was on solo violin without voice.
Wow.
Well, the earliest one that survives.
The more you know. And Dr. Henry, you've actually composed symphonies.
Yes.
Right? So tell us about it. You've done more than one. I know that for sure. So tell us how many you've done and how are you working on it and stuff like that.
Okay, so the symphonies I've done 4.
Okay.
We've premiered 2. Okay. And the third one will premiere later this year. Now, what am I doing so most people think when they hear symphony, they think European music.
Yes.
They think dead white people. Sorry, Simon.
I'm not dead yet.
Okay, here you go. All right. This is a running gag that he and I have. All right. But really what what a symphony is, it's a work for a symphony orchestra.
Yes.
And it really is just an exploration of musical themes and ideas in 4 movements, sometimes 5. And a movement, for people who don't know, a movement is just a discrete part of the larger work. It's like a scene in a play. Okay? Now, what I try to do is, I'm not just, here I am writing a classical symphony. No. I'm trying to learn from the way that we make music in Trinidad. We make music in Trinidad. And you know who are the most proficient makers of music across the musical landscape in Trinidad and Tobago? The panorama arrangers.
Yes.
What they have been doing for the past 60 years has been exploring a thing that is specific to the way we make music in Trinidad and Tobago, and that's primarily rhythm, and secondarily melody. And what they've been doing is they've been exploring ways in which rhythm and melody intertwine on the voice of the pan. The pan has its own specific voice and its own way of making music.
Yeah.
And so the arrangers, whom I call composers, but nobody likes to call them composers, they like to call them arrangers. And I have a philosophical problem with that, because calling them arrangers negates all of the compositional work that they do. You know, when you listen to Kitchener's B's melody, and then you listen to Jit Samaru's B's melody, one is the original song, and then one is a derivative work that's based on that song. Okay? And to get back to the symphonic writing, I directly try to borrow from the way that the panorama composers have been using theme development, rhythm, voicing, and all of the ways that they compose these derivative works. Not just the melodies that they use, but the techniques that they use. And trying to copy those techniques in the way that I write for a symphony orchestra.
Because that would be a local technique, a local
exactly.
method.
It is me learning from what our big sister, big brother organization has been doing for the past 60 years. And taking that and saying, well, yeah, this fits onto these instruments as well. And it is a legitimate expression of the way that we make music in Trinidad and Tobago.
But I mean, to some extent though, this is also a window. As much as we want to celebrate local music and continue its advancement, because that's the originality to offer to the world, that unique to us, there's also something we said. We had a show, Carnival, earlier in the year. Just about every vocalist and musician, they weren't just limited to soca or calypso or a local genre. They would rattle off 2 or 3 other genres that they would learn things from, that they would take from. And having a symphony orchestra, to some extent also, it's a window for our local musicians to, one, have a platform that would not have existed otherwise, but also to have a window to get that, influence of other musical types and other musical cultures, which could then kind of be put into the blender of whatever we want to now come out with at the end.
Yes.
Which is, that's what art is. It progresses not in a vacuum, but in an environment of whatever we could draw from. Am I correct?
Yes, you're absolutely correct. And another thing that art also does is it inspires. And so the goal, one of the goals that I have for the orchestra is that it should inspire people to think that they can write music for an orchestra of this type.
Yes.
And when they are composing their pieces, they're composing their soca's and their calypsos and their songs, they're also thinking, I could compose something that is symphonic too. Because here we have this example of it being done well. I didn't start musical life as a composer. I started composing music for the NPO because the NPO needed music to play. And it's really been interesting to watch the way that some of my colleagues, Wasia is one of them, Martina Chow is another. We have members of the orchestra who are also now taking up that kind of challenge that I have laid down over the past 10 or 11 years for members of the orchestra to start doing the things that I do and to do it better than I do, which she does.
In your...
Absolutely.
But I mean, we have proof, madam. You cannot just deny. But experience, based off your respective experiences, isn't it also, to some extent, the bigger picture things could also filter down? Not everybody's going to necessarily compose for a symphony, but if they see you do it, composing for an orchestra, you know, now, like, the door is open. Well, we could go from calypso to orchestra. There's space in between that people can inhabit. Maybe a big band. A big band could be a 10-piece band. It doesn't have to just be, you know, brass and guitars, or, you know, a typical soca band, which is a riff of a typical rock band.
Well, we already have, as part of the orchestra, we have offshoots where we have smaller ensembles.
Yes.
And we've done quite a few events in the last few years where we have a sort of a 12 or 15-piece band with single strings, single wind, brass, percussion. And we've been doing smaller arrangements of a lot of older tunes. So everything from Lovies all the way up to Destra and everything in between. And that's sort of one of the offshoots that we can offer. And we've done a lot of, let's say, government events and corporate events.
So if you can't afford the whole orchestra, folks, you know, there are levels, you know, the affordability as well as intimacy. You know, sometimes a smaller, intimate performance might be better.
One question that I always actually wanted to ask. So I remember my very first NPO show. I believe it was in Queensville. I can't remember. Maybe a couple of years ago. And I left the hall feeling this sound is so pure and it is so clear. There's a lot of, it's as close to crystal as you can get every single time. What do you think as director and as overall members of it, as the organization, what do you think contributes to that clear sound and pure sound?
Well, one of my goals is for the orchestra to never have to use amplification or sound reinforcement. Okay? And this has been a battle that we've been, let me not say a battle, it's been a train that we're riding.
Is it because of the venues, technical
No,
limitations?
it's because of the people who run sound. And it's not to blame them or to complain about them, but there's no tradition of symphonic music. And when you're gonna present symphonic music to an audience in a space that doesn't conduce to people being able to hear, you have to use some reinforcement.
Right.
And I think the approach of a lot of people is, well, they need to hear, let's just turn it up. But that's not what we're talking about. So
how many elements, different instruments make up an orchestra, kind of generally?
Well, you have the big families. You have the string family, the wind family, the brass family.
But they all have subsets.
Yes. So if you think of each one as a choir of having 4 or 5 voices, that's kind of how it's laid out. Right? Same Janine De Beek, when she came for Carifesta, I think it was in 2019, she wanted to be able to sing on the stage of Napa and have it sound like her voice was... Now, the Napa is a space that is not intended for acoustic sound. It's intended for produced sound, okay? And so she wanted a sound profile that made it sound like the sound was coming from the stage, not just from the stage, but where she stood on the stage, and not from the speakers at the side. And that's something that Napa technicians were absolutely able to accomplish. Okay? And so the question that you asked had to do with how do we kind of strike that balance? And it's about having a clear vision of how this sound should be received by the audience, and having collaborators who know their craft and are open to the trial and error that sometimes comes. Now, Simon's been doing a lot of work on this, and I want to give him a chance to kind of talk through some of the issues that we deal with.
I am very interested in this, by the way, and I'll say why afterwards before we wrap up.
So my background when I was in England is in classical symphony orchestras. In fact, the orchestra I was used to work in for 10 years is the Royal Northern Symphonia, a similar sized orchestra to the MPO. But we had a new concert venue that opened in 2005, similar to around the same time, 5 years earlier than Napa. But that was particularly geared acoustically to the sound of the orchestra and of acoustic instruments. It could also do amplified music as well. It's very varied. With Napa Stage, because of the size of it, it was built to accommodate pan orchestras and theatre, and it's a variety auditorium. There's actually more space between the front of the stage and the back of the stage than there is between the front of the stage and the audience. So a lot of the sound, if there's no support or no, we use actually an acoustical shell behind the orchestra now, which helps to project the natural sound out. But if that wasn't there, then you wouldn't really hear it as it's meant to sound. A lot of the sound would just disappear up and behind. So one of the first things we decided we need that acoustical shell. And even then, we need a little help just to balance the strings. We have a small string section now for a symphony orchestra. We have a full double wind, double brass.
Right.
So we need a little extra support for the strings. And luckily, we have a team at Napa that is developing that kind of that sound with us, and it feels now that they're pushing against an open door. Before, I know Dr. Henry was saying it was a bit like a challenge, but now definitely we're getting there, and we're actually using some techniques that were used with symphony orchestras and small orchestras in recording techniques, which is more getting the overall sound.
Yes.
And just a few spots where needed to bring those, rather than, I think the culture before was to spot mic everything. Right. So everybody would be mic'd, and then you'd bring everything up, and that's for more when you're recording everything separately and putting it together. But when you want to get the sound of the orchestra as a whole,
live,
to have this thing, and we've been using something called a Decca tree, which is been around since the 60s, to get the overall orchestra sound, and then just tweak it with the occasional spot mic for the woodwind solos and the double bass and the percussion. And the good thing about the technique is it does give a little prominence to the front, to the strings. Right. So it seems to be working well, and it sounds really clear.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. And we do have to.
I just wanted to say, choirs have a similar issue, not exactly the same way. And I don't think any choir has someone with your professional background to kind of try to solve it in that way. But I very much understand sound is not geared for the various challenges that non-band music, five-piece band, like that's what we know. That's what we know well, and we don't really know anything outside of that well. But that was fascinating to me, and I very much appreciate that kind of effort into our local music. As much as it was a little bit of a segue, appreciate folks the knowledge and the work done by the NPO.
And before we leave, we can't leave without talking about the concert that's coming up. So, Wasia, can you tell us a little bit about it as one of the arrangers?
So we are having a concert called Is a Rhythm, where we showcase exactly what we are talking about here, where we're showing that our music, our Trinidadian music, can be played and sound really good by an orchestra, a local orchestra. So we have arrangements by Dr. Henry and myself and other arrangers within the orchestra. It's happening on the 29th of May this month at 6 p.m. That is a Wednesday, the night before the holiday. So
nice.
You don't have to worry about work.
Avenue after.
And we hope you guys are there. Tickets are $200, available at Napa box office.
And Sapa box office.
And Sapa.
So for those down south,
$200 is cheap.
For such a concert.
For a concert these days. For a concert. Right? Let's just get it out there.
Absolutely.
And you're getting it. You know what? Let me not do that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to these wonderful guests, Dr. Henry, Wasia, Simon. Thank you so much. I hope you all had a good time.
Yes, we did.
And I will see you. We'll see you on the 29th of May. And we hope to see all of you here. Yes. We hope to see all of you at the at Is a Rhythm. Make sure and get your tickets. Follow the National Philharmonic on all their social media, Facebook, Instagram. This is Breakthrough. My name is Mark Anthony Peter. Sean Michael Small. We'll be right back.